Now that railway station facade, Huddersfield Station, was described by John Betjeman as the most splendid in England. And I don't disagree. It looks fabulous, doesn't it? And you can see the station clock there, and a little bit of folklore for you, a little bit of legend and urban myth. When that clock there strikes 12 midnight, we just go around a little bit. The lion that sits on top of the Lion Chambers building comes alive and creeps down the side of the building, and as I wander around this fabulous square, St George's Square. It's a nice little story, isn't it? And what else can we see? Well, I'll tell you a bit more about that lion actually. That's a fiberglass replica of the original stone lion that was erected in 1853, and you may just see there on the right hand side Britannia looking down, keeping an eye on everybody. So there we have a statue of one of Huddersfield's more famous sons, Harold Wilson, who was Prime Minister twice, 1964 to 1970, and then again 1974 to 1976, as you can clearly see. His peerage was Lord Wilson of Revo, and he lived between 1916 and 1995. So, a term attributed, the leader of the party, and no less the Prime Minister, has a duty to meet the people. And something I didn't know until I've come across this statue today was that Harold Wilson founded the Open University, and there's a little motto there: learn and live. So in that building there, the George Hotel, on August the 29th 1895, as far back as then, a meeting took place with 21 clubs who broke away, and rugby league was formed. So if you've ever enjoyed watching that code, that building's where it all began. Now Huddersfield does have a couple of rugby union teams as well, but it is known for the rugby league team, which is Huddersfield Giants. Now the current MP for Huddersfield is somebody called Harpreet Kaur Uppal, who's a Sikh, and she represents the Labour Party. And one final fact from the centre of Huddersfield: as a benefit gig for striking firefighters, on Christmas Day of all days, the Sex Pistols played their final British gig ever in a nightclub called Ivanhoe's. Who'd have thought it, eh? Anarchy in the UK. And then just after that they went to America and imploded, as we all know. Now one thing I do need to mention is that there's a very famous little doggy who comes from Huddersfield, or was bred in Huddersfield, by the name of Huddersfield Ben. Now that Yorkshire Terrier, every Yorkshire Terrier at some point can trace back their lineage to that particular sire. And Huddersfield Ben only lived for 6 years, but boy, he certainly made his mark in that time, from 1865 to 1871. Sadly, he was run over by a carriage and killed. Goodness knows there would have been a lot more Yorkshire Terriers, I believe, then maybe. So he's the foundation sire of the breed. Now if you love Yorkshire Terriers, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to mention this, he was taxidermised, so he got stuffed, but he actually went missing in the Second World War, so poor old Huddersfield Ben. But if you're looking at your Yorkshire Terrier now, your little loved one there, cuddling up on the settee in front of the fire. You've possibly got Huddersfield Ben to thank for that. The little devil. And obviously the football team, Huddersfield Town, are nicknamed the Terriers, or Town, whichever way you want to look at it. And like myself, I thought it was really down to their tenacity and resilience, a bit like the Lion up there. But no, apparently it's a history of little Huddersfield Ben as well that has a bearing on that. So what else do we know about Huddersfield? Well, it gave us the first enclosed tram. Karl Marx and Engels visited here, and that's part of the centre of radicalism and change, social change, that Huddersfield's always been famous for. And this area, which is now under Kirklees, has got some phenomenal buildings and has provided a setting to quite a lot of TV programmes. Happy Valley, that was great, wasn't it? Last of the Summer Wine in Home Firth, of course, just down the road. Where the Heart Is. Okay, so this is the ACU Stadium, ACCU, or John Smith Stadium. It's had various names, hasn't it, really? Was it the Gal Farm as well at one time? So we'll have a little close look. I won't go too far into it, but it's the home of Huddersfield Town, who are in League One currently. Bit of a sleeping giant, to be honest. One of the great old clubs in England. And also Huddersfield Giants. Obviously rugby league team. Now in May 2022 an unusual and great thing happened, in that both the Giants and Huddersfield Town both reached their respective finals. Huddersfield Town in the Championship playoff final, and the Giants played Wigan in the Challenge Cup final. Sadly, both teams lost, both clubs lost. Huddersfield Town quite narrowly, actually, to Notts Forest, just 1-0. So you can imagine the excitement in the town leading up to it. Then I guess the disappointment after the weekend, but at least not one team had any bragging rights over the other, and they could come back to Huddersfield and sup a few pints of John Smiths together. So let's have a look at some of these pieces of art as well. Those of you that are into football and history, football to me always represents my relationship with my dad, and I'm sure it does a lot of people. It's kind of handed down to you, really. So I thought you'd want a nice closer look at that. Again, by the rivers, lots of rivers around Huddersfield, as I mentioned before. Soft water that was used in the Industrial Revolution in the process of weaving. Just as recently as the last few weeks, there's been a number of shootings, tit for tat, but obviously I don't really want to discuss them because they're ongoing cases, aren't they? But according to some locals, they're drug related. Could be a bit of county line stuff going on here, I don't know. And to be honest, I don't really want to know. But I just want to give you a bit of a feel for the town, what it looks like. And you may have seen my other videos where I'm walking around northern towns, and quite specifically Yorkshire towns. And the demographics have changed. The way they look has changed. And Huddersfield's no exception by all accounts, and we'll try and have a look at that. You can see there, I've been reading about this just ahead there. I believe there was an arson attack just a couple of weeks ago. And you can see the style of the shops. So in terms of population, I believe around about 1 in 4 people, if the last census is anything to go by, identify in Huddersfield as Muslim. That's based on people that actually completed the census detail, of course. And it was a few years ago now, so I'd imagine that might be a few more now. So the aesthetic has certainly changed over the last few years from being a town that was very much part of the Industrial Revolution with weaving, due to the soft water provided by the rivers locally. So it's quite early morning. European mini market. They all seem to pop up, don't they? I think we get the idea by now. Transfer of money outside of the UK to different countries. And what looks like a mosque. GCSE Urdu, if you fancy learning that here, you can do. And another travel centre, money transfer option. Yeah, so this area is called Blacker Road, if you're familiar with it, and it has actually been blighted with quite a lot of crime over the years. So lots of places where you can purchase halal food, halal meat if you want to. Quite a lot of halal meat actually. Obviously with it being early morning, there are people going to school with their kids, so I'm trying to avoid them. Don't want to be filming those, obviously. You can just imagine what it looks like on an evening round here. Probably lit up quite well with a lot of neon and garish lighting. There we are, if you fancy a pizza. That's what we've got on offer there. I don't think you're going to be able to get ham and pineapple though, I'm afraid. Yeah, you can see the old bridges there. Maybe an old railway bridge that went over. Now you've got extensive fly tipping everywhere, which is a real shame, isn't it, that it's not kept on top of. We're paying enough in council tax, aren't we, really? Let's be right. And you get all this. Disgraceful, really. And this wall needs sorting out. And it's everywhere, to be honest. Not just a Huddersfield problem, is it? Graffiti, all the tags. And that's number 40 Osborne Road in an area of Huddersfield called Birkby. Now back in 2002, after a family feud, the most heinous and atrocious crime was committed, where a whole family was wiped out as they slept, and I hope they slept. From the young members to the older members of the family, 8 people lost their lives. A number of men were convicted of it, 2 for murder and 2 as accomplices for manslaughter. Now, one of the murderers, the main antagonist if you like, the central figure who planned it, he actually fled to Pakistan, and it took 17 years to actually extradite him. Shahid Mohammed he was called, and get him back in court where he was convicted of the 8 murders. I mean, it's a horrible, horrible, cowardly and dastardly crime. And Huddersfield's, judging by the research I've done and having a look around and reading about what's going on in the town, I've got to say, even now, it's a very, very dangerous town. Okay, so as you can probably see there, I'm on a street called Bath Street in Huddersfield, and as part of this cultural shift, a short while ago, a few years ago actually now, there was on here what was deemed in the press and the court as something of an honour killing, which is culturally not something that I align with whatsoever. And the story goes that an 18-year-old girl, just 18, who had actually been in an arranged marriage, had her life ended, shall we say, by her 2 brothers, and I just can't get my head around that. You know, you want to honour your family and you're devout, so what do? You end the life of your sister and her lover. It's actually said that they never found the bodies, sadly. They just disappeared, which is terrible, isn't it, really? Okay, so the 2 brothers were called Abdul Haq and Mohammed Salim, and their sister was called Sharifan Bibi, and her lover Hashmat Ali. So again, completely different culture to what I'm used to. Okay, so I'm just rounding off my time in Huddersfield, and those of you that are a certain vintage that fit with my channel More Than a Midlife Crisis moniker, for want of a better term, will remember, particularly if you were based in the north, the terrible crimes committed by Peter Sutcliffe, who was known as a Yorkshire Ripper. So, why am I here? Well, his penultimate victim that actually survived was a young girl called Teresa Sykes. It was bonfire night at 8 p.m. 1980. The young Teresa had gone to the shop, and I'm going to try and follow her steps now. Now, I don't know the exact route. I'm only going off a couple of sites that I've seen to get a rough idea of what actually happened. I have seen a short documentary featuring Teresa, so I get the idea that it was on this street where she'd gone to the shop. Now, I don't know whether what is now the Premier on the left was another type of shop now, but let's say she'd gone to the shop for some bits and bobs. She was walking down this street, and as you can see, there's nothing too fantastic about the street. It's an ordinary area of Huddersfield. I believe it's called Marsh. It does have a lot of international shops and is multicultural. like most places in the UK now. You've got your barbers, your cake shops, all the usual stuff. Anyway, back to the story. So Sutcliffe had parked up in the Bay Horse on the right there, the Bay Horse pub, and he was watching Teresa as she made her way back to her home on Willwood Avenue. It's a short journey, and she crossed over this busy main road that we've got ahead. As you can imagine, with it being bonfire night, you would like to think there was a lot of people about. It was only 8 o'clock at night that there had been firework displays going off, bonfires and so on. So I can only assume it would have been quite busy, but there's the Bay Horse pub, you see. And that's where the Ripper was, lying in wait. And there we have a garage. I'm putting 2 and 2 together here. I'm hoping I'm not making 5. So please, if anybody knows the exact details and I'm getting it badly wrong, I apologise now. But let me know in the comments. Tell everybody in the comments. So we're just going to cross this road while we can. Like I say, it's quite busy, so don't they get run over. So Teresa was his 22nd victim, the penultimate victim actually, and she was recovering from brain surgery when he was eventually caught in 81, so it was only a few months after. So I can only assume that the footpath that she was walking down is this one. Just after the garage on the left hand side we have a public footpath. It's quite eerie actually, walking down here. And I can't stress enough really that we're all pretty much terrified. You go to a football match, there was a big billboard. There was obviously the examples of handwriting. There was those hoax tapes being played to George Oldfield, you know, with the northeast accent. And it was scary times for a lot of people. So anyway, this public footpath here, I'm assuming this is where Teresa walked, and in his usual cowardly style, Sutcliffe came up behind her and hit her on the head. And she says now she's even got a hole where she can fit an egg into it all these many years later. So I thought I'd show you that. It's quite interesting if you are interested in true crime. And it was only by sheer luck that Teresa was saved by her then boyfriend, who was something of a fitness fanatic and fit as a fiddle, and he ran out to her assistance and scared Sutcliffe off. Now Sutcliffe ran off, as the maggot would, as you can imagine, little cowardly maggot of a man, and hid in a garden until the coast was clear, and then went. Now the alibi that I guess he would normally have with Sonia always by his side, it didn't tally actually for the events this evening. I mean, obviously with it being bonfire night, it's a notable evening, so chances are you would remember what was going on. So it stood out, and some say it led to his demise. And the rest